When Rome captured a queen, the war was already over, but her suffering was only beginning. Roman power was not satisfied with victory alone. It demanded submission that could be seen, remembered, and feared. For a defeated queen, death could have been a release. Instead, Rome often chose survival because survival allowed Rome to transform a living ruler into a symbol of total domination. Queens were not treated as ordinary prisoners of war. They were treated as messages. Their bodies, their identities, and their futures became tools through which Rome spoke to the world, declaring that no throne, no lineage, no divine claim to rule could stand against Roman authority. Roman culture believed deeply in spectacle. Power had to be visible to be real. This belief shaped everything from gladiatorial games to public executions, and it reached its most calculated cruelty in the treatment of captured royalty. A queen represented sovereignty, legitimacy, and the favor of the gods. To kill her quietly would deny Rome the chance to publicly dismantle those ideas. Instead, Rome preferred to display her broken authority in front of its citizens, its senate, and its enemies. The humiliation was not incidental, it was the point. By forcing queens to live through their defeat, Rome turned them into walking proof that resistance was futile. One of the most terrifying instruments of this humiliation was the Roman triumph. To the Roman people, the triumph was a celebration of civilization over barbarism, order over chaos. To the captives forced to participate, it was a ritualized nightmare. Captured queens were dragged through the streets of Rome in chains, often dressed in clothing meant to exaggerate their foreignness. Their names, titles, and former glory were announced not to honor them, but to mock them. Crowds jeered as women who once commanded armies and ruled nations were reduced to trophies in a parade. The irony was deliberate. The more powerful the queen had been, the more satisfying her degradation was to Roman eyes. The case of Cleopatra Selene II reveals how deeply Rome understood the power of psychological destruction. She was not even a reigning queen when Rome used her as a symbol. She was a child, the daughter of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony, two figures Rome needed to erase and discredit in order to legitimize Augustus's rule. By forcing Cleopatra Selene to walk in Augustus's triumph, celebrating the conquest of Egypt, Rome sent a chilling message. Not even royal blood could protect you. The child was spared execution, but her life was no longer her own. She was raised under Roman supervision, educated according to Roman values, and later married off in a way that served Roman political interests. Her survival was conditional on her usefulness. Rome did not destroy her body, it reshaped her identity. Other queens understood this fate well enough to choose death instead. Boudica of the Iceni, who led a massive rebellion in Roman Britain, knew exactly what capture would mean. Roman sources describe how Roman officials flogged her and raped her daughters before the revolt even began. These were not random acts of cruelty, they were expressions of Roman entitlement over conquered bodies. When Boudica's forces were finally defeated, her disappearance from history strongly suggests suicide. If so, it was an act of defiance, not despair. By denying Rome the chance to parade her, imprison her, or erase her through humiliation, she preserved something Rome could not take: control over her own ending. Zenobia of Palmyra provides one of the clearest examples of Rome's preference for living symbols over dead enemies. Zenobia was not a marginal figure. She ruled a powerful breakaway empire in the East and openly challenged Roman authority. When Emperor Aurelian captured her, he could have executed her immediately. Instead, he brought her back to Rome alive. Ancient sources describe her being paraded in his triumph, weighed down with heavy gold chains, struggling to walk as the crowd watched. The gold itself was part of the cruelty. It symbolized wealth turned into burden, power turned into punishment. Afterward, Zenobia was not killed. She was allowed to live, quietly, privately, stripped of power and voice. Rome reduced a queen who once ruled provinces into a decorative survivor, her political significance erased. Rome's choice to spare some queens was not mercy, it was strategy. A dead queen could become a martyr, inspiring future rebellions and romanticized resistance. A living queen, silenced and controlled, served as a warning. She demonstrated not just Roman military superiority, but Roman ownership over fate itself. By keeping queens alive, Rome claimed the authority to decide not only who ruled, but who mattered, who was remembered, and who was allowed to disappear into obscurity. Imprisonment was another weapon Rome used to devastating effect. While some queens were kept under house arrest in villas, others vanished into prisons where conditions were harsh and isolating. Removed from their courts, their children, and their cultural roles, they experienced a slow erasure of self. For queens whose identities were inseparable from leadership and sacred duty, this isolation was a form of living death. Rome understood that destroying a ruler's sense of purpose was more effective than killing her outright. Sexual violence and enslavement were ever-present threats, even when ancient sources remained vague or silent. Roman law permitted the enslavement of war captives, and enslaved women had no legal protection from sexual exploitation. While elite captives were sometimes spared public enslavement, many royal women were not. Silence in the historical record does not indicate absence. It reflects discomfort, normalization, and selective memory. Rome did not need to record these acts because they were not crimes in Roman eyes. They were privileges of conquest. Perhaps the most insidious cruelty Rome inflicted was historical erasure. Roman historians controlled the narrative and they were loyal to Roman ideology. Captured queens were often portrayed as arrogant, irrational, overly emotional, or dangerously ambitious, qualities Rome associated with femininity when it wanted to delegitimize female power. Those who survived Rome frequently disappeared from the historical record not because they ceased to exist, but because Rome decided they no longer deserved remembrance. Memory itself became a battlefield, and Rome won it by writing history on its own terms. In the end, what Rome did to captured queens was worse than death because it attacked every layer of existence. It destroyed public authority through humiliation, personal identity through captivity, bodily autonomy through enslavement, and legacy through erasure. Death would have ended suffering. Survival under Rome prolonged it, transforming queens into living monuments of defeat. Rome did not merely conquer lands, it conquered meaning. And for the queens who fell into its hands, life after capture was not life at all. It was Rome's final victory, stretched out over years, sometimes decades, until nothing of the queen remained but silence.